Alright, welcome back to my second attempt to make the most annoying Heartbreaker build possible. Now this one again is going to be a skill build, except instead of doing skill damage, we are going to be focusing more on status effect. But this isn't just any status effect build. This is an attempt to make one of the most useless skills in PvP useful. That's right, we are going to be using the incinerator turret. Oh man, is this fun. Now, I'm not going to sit here and blow smoke up your butt. This is a difficult build to use, but it has a lot of potential. Now, there are some significant challenges that this build does have to come to terms with, but as the meta starts to kind of spread out and shift and people change up things and, they're not just trying out the newest stuff, right? As the meta starts to shift, I think this build will probably just become even more powerful. And of course, I'm going to talk about those counters later on in the video, but for now, I just want to talk about how aggravating it must be for somebody to all of a sudden just get the flame turret on them. I mean, let's be completely and utterly honest. In PvP, people are completely baffled by the flame turret. People do not know how to deal with the flame turret because they've never dealt with it. And there's good reason for it because it's just not that good. I mean, one of the biggest problems, obviously, that is really not a very long range type weapon. I mean, you can only throw it a short distance, and then of course the flame itself only has a short distance. So if you're trying to actually be like a real statusy build, like a full-on status effects skill tier build, you really can't get much use out of it because you can't get that close to the enemy without just being dropped. But by pairing it with Heartbreaker, with those bonus armor stacks, right, I can get into places, I can face tank enemies, I can drop this flame turret right in front of them, and they burn. They burn good. Now, of course, jumping into the build real quick, I am using the Tactician, and that is for that additional skill tier and skill damage. Now, my primary weapon is actually the Pyromaniac. Yes, it's not perfectly rolled, but perfectly ignited is definitely a good talent to have on this weapon. Of course, since I'm not rocking crit, again with this build, pretty much everything's just rolled with stability, and of course the Tactician laser to spot enemies. My secondary is, again, a rock and roll. Obviously that 30 round magazine is very nice, and again, stability and the laser. Now what you're going to see here on all my gear is pretty much just status effect, and if I can't put status effect on it, or if I've already got it, it's got skill haste, just like my mod slots. Status effect, skill haste. And surprisingly, this makes a pretty nice, pretty dirty combo. Now for my two yellows, I am using a Golan, and that's obviously for that status effect. And then I'm using the closer named Uzina piece for that perfect spotter, so I get that 20% extra damage to pulsed enemies. Now, when I originally envisioned this build, I really wanted to use the Airburst Seeker Mine, because it is pretty much one of the best burn skills in the game. The only problem is, it's just incredibly difficult to use. Of course, something a little bit easier is the burn sticky bomb, which obviously, if you've been in a run and gun fight before, being able to just quickly snap out that friggin' burn sticky is aggravating to anyone engaged with you. But of course, when you're this tanky and you can build these stacks, it's even worse. Now, of course, I was thinking that the Airburst, because it does have the longest burn duration of any of the skills, would be really good for this build. The problem is, it's just nearly unusable in PvP. I mean, it's at least as far as this kind of build goes. Now, that's due to a couple issues, mostly the fact that, the lag in the game, that's kind of a hindrance. Just the mechanics of the skill itself are pretty aggravating. And then, of course, you have to deal with the fact that it just straight up telegraphs where it's about to go off at. So I was hoping that by getting a little bit closer, I could, not telegraph as much, get the enemy, unaware of this skill actually about to go off. But the truth is, it doesn't work too well. I mean, the fact that, if I'm trying to be within like 5 or 10 meters of the enemy, trying to set this stupid thing off, half of the time, some reason, probably lag issues, whatever, it ends up burning me and then doesn't burn them, and then I'm on fire like an idiot. So I pretty much was like, okay, I got to get rid of this. And I was really like, I don't want to use the chem launcher. I mean, honestly, I just hate the chem launcher in PvP. I mean, it can be good. It's just, it's not something that I enjoy using, right? Now, it can come in handy because obviously I'm a little bit tankier, but it's also a pain in the butt to try to like get out your weapon after you use this stupid thing. So that's one of the issues that I was kind of like trying to avoid the chem launcher for. But the fire turret, or I guess I should say the incinerator turret, is not really extremely user-friendly. And of course, if you're trying to throw it while you're running, it's that's going to be a disaster. But if you can actually just drop it in front of you while you're face tanking someone, that thing's going to start going off, start spraying all over the place. They're going to get burned. Then, of course, you can just pick it up and have a really low cooldown. So that can be really nice on this kind of build. And of course, as you saw in the beginning, if you get lucky and the entire enemy's trying to fit through one little narrow hallway and basically, trade tanks with you, this can just set them all on fire, debilitating every single one of them. Now, alright, like I said in the beginning, this build is not invincible. There are definitely some significant challenges to go over. But oddly enough, the most annoying thing that fights this build really well is actually that stupid Catharsis mask. I mean, who would have thought? Like, honestly, when I was thinking of this build, I didn't even consider the Catharsis mask being a good counter to this build, which is pretty funny because I just made that video the other day, kind of, not really bashing it, but kind of bashing it, I guess. Yeah. Anyway, that mask is actually pretty, for lack of a better word, I guess, perfect against this kind of build. And why do I say that? Because obviously the Catharsis mask drops the healing cloud when you get 30 stacks, right? Builds up the damage while you're actually having these stacks. So if you have like 5, you get 5% damage, whatever. But it also removes status effects whenever you drop that healing circle. Okay, so what is this build about? This build is about using fast-firing weapons to build your stacks on Heartbreaker and applying a status effect. So basically what ends up happening is you shoot them, you start building their stacks, you apply the status effect to them, they start burning, but while you're trying to build your own stacks, you end up basically just giving them more Catharsis stacks. They drop that healing cloud, remove their burn, and now have 50% healing that you're also trying to fight through their Heartbreaker build with too. So it's kind of like, it is almost in essence the perfect counter to this build. Heartbreaker and Catharsis basically stops everything because you're not dealing as much damage as a DPS build. So that healing that you actually get from Catharsis is a lot more important. This build doesn't deal the damage, so it can't really overcome the combination of Catharsis healing and bonus stacks when someone else is using a high rate of fire weapon. But that's just something that I kind of found funny. So if you encounter somebody running a, blue and yellow status effect Heartbreaker build, yeah, a red and blue Catharsis Heartbreaker build is probably the perfect combo for that. I did test around a little bit in PvE with this. And the only thing is, burn on one single enemy at a single time isn't really what I was going for. I mean, if you're going for a status effect build, you want to spread it to everything, and you want to probably run, Creeping Death or Eclipse Protocol. Since I didn't really have that luxury in this build, I mean, I could put on Creeping Death, but this isn't really a full-on functional PvE status effect skill build. So I kind of wanted to play a little bit more to the strengths of it, and what I had in mind actually was to make it Hunter's Fury. And to do that, I needed to equip the Banshee Pulse, and then of course being able to disorient those enemies as I'm basically picking them off and building stacks. Now, while I'm not going to say that it's completely on par in this specific setup to be a match for Hunter's Fury, I definitely think that in almost many aspects of this game, in PvE, the Heartbreaker gear set is just better, at least in the way that I play, than Hunter's Fury is. So I could definitely see my new go-to build for PvE farming runs becoming a Heartbreaker with Memento backpack type thing. And obviously I would probably change it up a little bit. I would want more damage on it because obviously if you're trying to speed run stuff or farm through things quickly, you don't want to wait on skills. You just want to blow through the enemies and get it over with. But if you're a team player, you need somebody who uses status effects, but you also hate being squishy and you don't want to just sit there and be the guy that only does status effects, I think this kind of play style, or at least build style, would be good. Now, of course, since this is a face tanking status effect build, I can't really forget to mention that, yes, on the chest, the Ridgeway's Exotic would be really good. Of course, you might want to pair that with Sadist or Perfect Sadist. those would work well with this gear set. Obviously, that's going to give you a little bit of armor regen, which is nice, and it's going to give you increased damage. And since most people are focused on being pulse or counter pulse, getting bonus damage from bleed can be a good counter to that. And of course, the other exotic that I was considering for this build was the Imperial Dynasty holster. Now, obviously, that one will just burn an enemy whenever you're near them, and in PvP, it requires like 3 seconds of looking at an enemy or something like that. The reason that I didn't really use this piece for my PvP build is a couple reasons. One, you can usually see this giant circle around the player, and that of course lets the enemies know that you're there, and that's not something that I really enjoy. I know everyone's pulsing anyway, but I don't want to let them know that I'm coming so that they can pulse me. And the other thing is, I was never really impressed with the burn on that holster. And I don't think it's actually affected by status effects, at least the last time I tested. I may be incorrect on that, so leave me a comment down below if it actually is. But I was kind of worried that, one, it wouldn't be using my actual status effects, so that it wouldn't really be that good of a burn. And two, I was kind of worried that it would kick in basically right before I actually hit them with one of my burn skills, and then basically making my burn skill pretty much do nothing. Right? So I just figured it would be uncontrollable. I don't want to say uncontrollable, but just annoying and have bad timing and stuff like that. So that's really the reason why I just decided to avoid that. But if you wanted to get rid of all burn skills and just use the Imperial Dynasty, I guess you could give that a try. But anyway, guys, I hope you test out this build in PvP. I mean, I can't say it is the most insane build that is just going to rock everyone, but you are going to be significantly annoying to the enemy team. I mean, it's it's pretty hilarious. I'm not gonna lie, I had a lot of fun playing with this, and I'm probably gonna be using it for quite a while. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.